Daled Zion.
That's I.
We're talking about figs now. From when on may one eat tree fruits on the seventh year? The unripe ones, when they are reddened, one may eat his bread with them in the field, and once they begin ripening, one may take them into his house. So also in the other years of the 7 year cycle, he is liable to tithes. Unripe grapes, once they have produced liquid, one may eat his bread with them in the field, and once they have ripened, he may take them into his house. So also in the other years of the 7 year cycle, he is liable to tithes. And olives, once they yield one review per saw, they may be crushed and eaten in the field. If they yield half a log, they may be pressed and used as an ointment in the field. If they have produced a third, they may be pressed in the field and taken into his house. So also in the other years of the 7 year cycle, they are liable to tithes. But all other fruit trees, their season for the tithes is also in the season in regard to their seventh year.
Okay. So now, uh, once a you remember we were allowed to cut down wood. That's fine. If you need to use wood for construction or for firewood or whatever it is, that's permitted to do in the Shemitah year. The problem is that if you have fruit trees and they've got fruit on them, then you can't destroy the fruit. Okay, so now we also have a mitzvah, by the way, that you're not allowed to cut down a fruit tree at all.
Mhm.
So why would you be allowed to cut down this fruit tree? So it turns out that that mitzvah is only applicable if the fruit is more valuable than the wood itself. So if the tree as fruit tree is worth more, then you're not allowed to destroy it for the sake of um, wood. Okay, so now we're so in a situation where your wood is worth more, and you want to cut down branches from your fruit tree during Shemitah. Well, we're going to have to look at the restrictions. But ma'emasai ein kotzetzin ha'ilan b'shvius. From what time can you not cut down fruit tree branches in Shemitah year? Beis Shammai omrim kol ha'ilan mishayotzi. The whole tree once any kol ilan means not the whole tree, means any tree,
Okay.
any kind of fruit tree from the moment that it produces fruit, um,
Meaning the bud.
or
The
the
bud. Meaning the
hmm?
bud. Meaning the bud.
Yeah.
That's what you mean.
Well, actually, once the flour has thickened, I think kanata is the point here when it's actually started turning into fruit. But other people have a parish of mishayotzi alim, even from when it starts bringing out leaves.
Right. This
That's going to be a little difficult to judge if you're going by leaves on, say, a lemon tree, because that like never loses its leaves.
right. Right. Okay.
Okay. Um, so so that's Beis Shammai. Beis Hillel omrim hacharuvin mishishaleshu. From the time that Yishalesh is from the time that the carobs start to weigh down and to twist towards the bottom like shalshalot, like
So they droop, but like they droop in
yes,
this.
they droop. Yeah. Okay. Um, and Gefanim mishiyigareu, the grapes from the time that you can see the seeds.
It
Okay.
says this is when another interpretation is when the grapes have grown to the size of white beans.
Correct. Right? That is, and that's called boser. That's the ripeness stage, which we call boser. Um, V'hazesim
Wait,
mishi.
excuse me. This is called something else. It looks like here. Garoa,
Hmm?
garoa, garoa, garoa. Is that the word? It says the size. When they've got the size of white beans, they're called garoa.
Girua. That's called girua. Right. So the early stage is called girua when they're the size of the white beans, um, and the boss, and that's also the stage called boser. That's correct.
So the
Okay.
same word for both. Okay.
Okay. V'hazesim mishi anetzu. And olives from when they get the little berries on them.
Okay.
Okay. Ushar kol ilan mishayotzi, and the same, and all other trees from when they bring out fruit or leaves, according to the other interpretation, as we said above. Okay. V'chol ha'ilan, and all trees kevan sheba le'onas hamasros, as soon as they have the fruit has all reached the stage of masros, right, where they would be chayav in masros. Now that means that the fruit is edible independent of the tree. Now, mutar lekatzetzo. At this point, you're allowed to cut it down because now you could cut down the branches and take off the fruit, and the fruit is ripe and ready to eat. Okay, so once again, you're permitted to cut down the tree. At that point, it's not considered destroying the fruit. So it's during that window between when the fruit is starting to form and when the fruit is ripe, that you would not be allowed to cut down branches from the tree in Shemitah, because that would destroy the fruit. Okay, how much has to be on an olive tree that you're not allowed to cut it down? Rova, that's if you have a rova of olives, a rova kav. So
quarter of a kav, right?
Yeah, a quarter of a kav, which is this is only on the olive tree, because the olive tree is considered more important than other trees. But any other kind of tree, there's no issue to cut it unless it's got a kav, a full kav. Okay, Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel Omer, Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel Omer, hakol lefi hazayis. Everything is according to the zayis tree. What does that mean? Anything that the hakol ma shehazayis meshubach biyoter isur katzitza so afilu b'pachos mirova kav. Says if it produces high quality olives, then it could be even less than a quarter kav, according to Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel. Okay. Perik Hey Mishna Aleph Benos Shuach. These are the sort of white figs. Okay. Sheviis Shelahem Shania. So these, says the Mishnah, their Shemitah is in the second year of the Shemitah cycle. Why? Shehein Osos the Shalosh Shanim. In other words, they start forming in the 7th year, and they only become ripe 2 years later. Mm-hmm. Which means that's Shemitah produce now going through to the 2nd year. Okay, Rabbi Yehuda Omer haparsios, also kind of a fig, the parsi figs, Sheviis shelahen motzei Sheviis. He says just the year after the Shemitah, shehein osos the shtei shanim. They form in the Shemitah year, but they only become ripe in the following year. Amrulo. Lo amru ela benos shuach. We have no masorah for this. All that we have a masorah for is the benos shuach, which have the 2nd year fruit. Okay. Mr. Base. Tamen es haluf b'shvius. Now, if you've got luf is kind of an onion, which people usually would store in the ground for preservation. Okay, so now the problem with storing things in the ground during the Shemitah is it looks like you're digging into the ground and you're planting or whatever. So we want to have some kind of hikar that this is not planting in Shemitah, that you're just putting them in the ground for storage. Okay, Rabbi Meir Omer lo yivchos misasayim. You may not put less than 2 sa'ah into this thing to make it clear that this is a storage, a storage pit over here. Ad gova.
We're saying that the onions are ripe now; they're ready to eat.
They're ripe and ready to eat.
Instead of taking, we put them in the ground now.
Mm-hmm.
So
now he's putting them in the ground in order to preserve them, so that they should.
So that off of the tree or the vine. What are they on? They're on
onions. Onions grow under the ground.
It's like a bulb.
Yeah, it's a bulb. It's a regular, right? Imagine an onion bulb. The way you'd plant an onion bulb is by sticking it in the ground. Right. And the way you preserve it is by sticking it in the ground. What's the difference? Is that the bulbs you plant one by one, and the preservation you put a whole bunch into one place.
Okay, all right. So I was thinking he was taking them all out. He could take them in the house to eat, so to speak. But he has to preserve them, so he's putting them back in the ground.
Mm-hmm.
Back into the ground.
Correct. Okay. So Rabbi Meir says you cannot put less than 2 sa'ah of these into the ground if you're going to do it. Ad gova shelosha tvachim, and then to a depth of 3 tvachim. Now, what does that mean? It's got to be 3 tvachim deep of onions, not 3 tvachim, and it's going to have the tefach afar al gabav. and you have to put a tefach layer of sand on top of it. So so the hole's got to be at least 4 tefachim deep, 3 tefachim of onions and 1 tefach of sand. Okay. Says you've got to have 4 kav. 4 kav is that's not quite a sa. I think it's 6 kav to a sa, right? So they're much more lenient than Rabbi Meir. Okay, and
4 cars are 1/3 of 2 saws.
Yes, that's 1/3 of 2 sa, correct. Okay, so it's because it's 6 6 kav to a sa. So if you've got 2 sa would be 12 kav, and the Chachamim only say you need 4 kav, right? Ad gova tefach, and it only needs to be 1 tefach deep, which makes sense since it's a third of Rabbi Meir's share, and Rabbi Meir says it has to be 3 tefachim deep. Then Chacham will say, well, it only has to be 1 tefach deep. The tefach afar al gabav, and 1 tefach of sand on top of it. But it must be planted in a place where people walk. Why? So that to stop it from sprouting.
Right.
Because if people are walking, it's going to trample the soil down hard, and anything that's trying to grow won't grow so well, which is exactly what we want to make sure that it doesn't start growing during Shemitah. Okay. All right. Base Vav.
Okay. One may not plant, sink, or graft in the 6th year, less than 30 days before Rosh Hashanah. If one did plant, sink, or graft, he must uproot it. Rabbi Yehuda says any grafting that has not taken root within 3 days will never strike root. Rabbi Yossi and Rav Shimon say within 2 weeks. Rice, millet, poppy, and sesame, which took root before Rosh Hashanah, are tithed according to the previous year and are permitted in the 7th year. If not, they are forbidden in the 7th year and are tithed according to the following year. Reb Shimon Sasori says the Egyptian bean sown from the outset for seed. Likewise, Reb Shimon says large-sized beans. Likewise, Reb Eliezer says large-sized beans if they begin to form pods before Rosh Hashanah.
Okay. Kilayim.
Okay. Okay, we have Aleph. Wheat and darnel are not colliding with one with the other. Barley and oats, spelt and rye, beans and chickpeas, bitter peas and vetchling, white beans and kidney beans are not colliding with one another. Cucumber and cucumber melon are not colliding with one with the other. Yehuda says colliding. Garden lettuce and wild lettuce, endives and wild endives, leek and wild leek, coriander and wild coriander, mustard and Egyptian mustard or mustard gourd, and bitter apple or Egyptian beans and carob are not colliding one with the other. And turnip and radish, cabbage and cauliflower, beet and areca are not colliding with one another. Rebbe Kiva added garlic and onion and wild onion, lupine and wild lupine are not colliding one with the other.
Okay. Good. Next.
Zavim?
Zavim, yeah. Daled Hay.
In a case where 10 shawls were placed one on top of another, and a zav slept upon the top one, they are all tamei midrash. In a case where a zav was on one pan of a scale and a couch or seat was on the opposite side, if the zav weighed down his side, they are tahor. But if they weigh down their side, they are tamei.
Because effectively they're supporting the weight of the zav.
Tamei midrash, then, okay.
Yeah.
Shimon says in a case of a single couch or seat, it is tamei, but in a case of many, they are tahor because no one couch or seat supports a majority of his body. If a zav is on one pan of a scale and food and beverages on the second pan of the scale, they are tamei, both with regard to a corpse. Everything is tahor except for a person. This is a stringency that applies to a zav over a corpse, and this is a stringency that applies to a corpse over a zav. A zav creates a couch and seat beneath him with the ability to contaminate a man, to contaminate his clothing, and on top of him, the zav creates a madaf with the ability to contaminate food and beverages, whereas a corpse does not have the power to contaminate in these ways. This is a stringency that applies to a corpse that a corpse contaminates in an ohel and contaminates others with tuma that lasts for 7 days, whereas a zav does not have the power to contaminate in these ways. If a zav was sitting on a bed and there were 4 shawls under the 4 legs of the bed, they are tummy because the bed cannot stand on 3 legs. Reb Shimon rules them tahor. If a zav was riding upon an animal and there were 4 shawls under the animal's 4 legs, they're tahor because the animal can stand on 3 legs. If there was a single shawl under its 2 forelegs, or under its 2 hind legs, or under one of its 4 legs, or one of its hind legs, it's tummy. And Yossi says a horse conveys tuma through its hind legs, while a donkey conveys tuma through its 4 legs. So the primary support of a horse is on the hind legs, whereas the primary support of a donkey is on its 4 legs. If a zav sat upon the beam of an olive press, utensils that are in the pressing basket are tame. But if he sat upon the launderer's press, the utensils that are underneath it are tahor, and Reb Nechama rules them tame.
Okay. Kalim Chafdalad Yud Zayin.
These are the 3 boxes regarding a worn-out box that one patched onto a sound one. We follow the status of the sound one. If one patched a small box onto a large one, we follow the status of a large one. If they were equal, we follow the status of the interior box. Reb Shimon says regarding the pan of a balance scale that one patched onto the bottom of a boiler, if he patched it in the inner surface of the boiler is tameh. But if you patch it on the outer surface of the boiler is tahor. If one patched the pan onto the side of the boiler, whether in the inner surface or the outer, it is tahor. All utensils have an exterior and an interior, such as pillows, mattresses, sacks, and martufin.
Right. So the relevance of the interior and exterior is when you have tame liquids, because we said in that case when you have tame liquids being matame a kli, it's possible for just the outside to become tame. Whereas if the inside becomes tame, then the whole kli becomes tame.
This is the words of Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Meir says any utensil that has loops has an exterior and an interior, but any utensil that does not have loops does not have an exterior and an interior. What does he mean by loops? I couldn't figure that
The loops. So basically, it's something that shows you which is the inside or the outside of the pillowcase, for example. So if a pillowcase could be inverted.
Right.
Right. So there's nothing to show which is the inside or the outside, is what Rabbi Meir is saying. It has to have some sort of siman that the loops are on the outside, so that you know that this is definitely the outside of the kli. Otherwise, it's all one thing and it all becomes tamei at once.
Actually, that's what I need, the loops, because I always put it on backwards and then I have to take it out and do it over again. So a table and a deluf key have an exterior and an interior. These are the words of Rabbi Yehuda, but Rabbi Meir says they have no exterior, and so too a tray without a rim. An ox goad has an exterior and an interior, from 7 handbreadths for the blade and from 4 handbreadths for the prod. These are the words of Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Meir says they do not have an exterior and an interior. The measures of 4 handbreadths and 7 handbreadths were mentioned only with regard to the remnants of an ox goad.
Now remember that we had that with the ox goad, that if you have, it's got 2 ends to it.
Mm-hmm.
So if it got broken off with less than 7 tvachim on the one end or 4 tvachim on the other end, which is the useful. You need that length in order for it to be useful. So if it's broken off with less than that, then it's not tamei anymore. And that's what we're saying now. Now Rabbi Yehuda is coming and saying that also applies. That let's say your rod is 15 tvachim long. So then the 7 tvachim close to this end and the 4 tvachim close to that end are considered the toch. And if it becomes tamei, then the whole thing becomes tamei. But if it gets tamei in the middle piece that's not servicing either end directly, then that's considered achorayim. And if that becomes tamei, then it's not tamei the ends.
Okay, I got that. Okay. Sheviis.
That's it. Yeah.
Sheviis. Now, this is base Dalet. Now, what is the positive commandment concerning the menstruate for which there was a liability? If one was cohabitating with a woman who was tahor, and she said to him, I have become tamei, and he withdrew immediately, he is liable, because his exit is as pleasurable to him as his entry.
So this is the thing that when we're talking about, it's contrasting with the previous Mishnah, that if the Sanhedrin had ruled erroneously that this was permitted. So this is something that's chayav in kares, and they would have to bring the Parahelim Davar Shel Tzibor. Remember when the Sanhedrin makes a mistake.
Right.
Okay, so the previous case that they brought was with the was in the Mikdash, and that's also a chiyuv kares to not go out directly. But if they had ruled that way, they don't bring the Parahilim Dava because the penalty for shogeg is not a chatas, rather it's a korban olav or yored. Whereas in the case of the nida that we just brought in Mishna Dalet, that's the penalty there is kares and or a chatas. So that's a classic case that the Sanhedrin would have to bring a Parahilim Davar Shel Tzibor for.
Kares or akatos. You said or, right?
Yes, that's right. Because if it's bemazed, then it's kares, and if it's shogeg, then it's a chatas.
Elias says a sheret, if it escaped his awareness, he is liable for getting the sherets, but he is not liable for getting the temple. Rabbi Akiva says if it escaped his awareness and he was tameh, he is liable for getting the tuma, but he is not liable for getting the temple. Rabbi Ishmael says the words and it escaped his awareness and it escaped his awareness are stated twice to make one liable for both forgetting the tuma and forgetting the temple. Oaths oaths are of two types. One which in reality are four. I swear that I will eat, or I swear that I will not eat. I swear that I ate, or I swear that I did not eat. If he said, I swear that I will not eat, and he ate a minute quantity, he's liable. These are the words of Rebbe Akiva. They said to Rebbe Akiva, where do we find that one who eats a minute quantity is liable? That this one should be liable. Rebbe Akiva said to them, where do you find one speaking and bringing a sacrifice, that this one speaks and brings a sacrifice? I swear that I will not eat, and he ate and drank. He is liable only once. But if he said, I swear that I will not eat and I will not drink, and he ate and drank, he is liable twice.
Okay. Yeah, the argument between Rabbi Akiva and Chachamim. Everyone else says that eating is the definition of eating is a kazais. And Rabbi Akiva says no, any amount in this case, because this is a chiddush. It's not something that the Torah asks that directly in terms of eating. That like you're not allowed to eat chazer. That's talking about you're only liable if you actually ate a kazais. But with the shvua, he's created an isser on himself. So his word has created a new thing according to Rabbi Akiva, that even if he ate a minute amount, that would be chayav. Okay. Finally, Rosh Hashanah. They say.
There was a large courtyard in Yerushalayim which was called Beit Azek, and there all the witnesses gathered, and the Beit interrogated them and made them large feast in order that they be accustomed to come. Originally, they did not move from there all day. When then Ram Gamliel, the elder, enacted that they should be permitted to walk 2,000 cubits in every direction. And not only these witnesses, but also a midwife who comes to aid a delivery, and one who comes to rescue people from a fire, or from an attacking army, or from a flooding river, or from a fallen building, they are considered like the people of the city, and they have the right to walk 2,000 amet in every direction. How do they interrogate the witnesses? The pair that arrives first is interrogated first, and the elder is brought in, and they say to him, tell how you saw the moon, facing the sun or away from the sun, to its north or to its south. How high was it, and which way was it leaning, and how wide was it? If he said facing the sun, he said nothing. Then they would leave the second witness brought in. They would have the second witness brought in and interrogate him. If their words are found to coincide, the testimony is valid. If they ask the rest of the pairs of witnesses only the main points, not that they needed them, but so that they should have not leave disappointed, in order that they should be accustomed to come. The head of the Beit Din says, it is sanctified, and all the people respond after him, it is sanctified, it is sanctified. Whether it appeared or at its expected time, or whether it did not appear at expected time, they sanctified the day. But Elazar ben Tzadok said, if it did not appear at an expected time, they do not sanctify, for it had already been sanctified by heaven.
And this is the halacha: is that you only have two possible days on which the molad can appear.
Right.
So if it didn't appear on the first one, then we don't even need to take witnesses. Then it appeared on the second one. Okay, right. And we is done.
Where do you go to the gym?
We have an outdoor